Hey y'all, welcome to the internet. This is Avery, and this is the Photoshop exercise number 1. And in this exercise, we'll be making something that looks like this. A really quick looping animation where we're using Photoshop, we're using Illustrator, and we're using a pen and paper. And through this process, we're going to practice observational drawing. We're going to practice using smart objects in brushes and layers and groups and various image adjustments in Photoshop. And then we're going to learn how we take a hand-drawn thing and something we make with pen and paper and turn it into a vector image using image trace in Illustrator. So this will be in 2 parts. The first part will deal with the image that we create and how we turn it into a vector image. And the second part will be in Photoshop, primarily where we'll make an animation. So let's start. Well, let me start with this. Where's this assignment coming from? What's the inspiration? The inspiration, in part, is cell animation. So this in a way, this process is still used in animation, but we use computers now. But the idea is the same. It's a line drawing that has color behind it. And this is it. So it was done on, it's called cell animation because it was done on celluloid, so a clear, a transparency paper, essentially. And, first you had, because there was frames of animations, you had the sketches to kind of figure out the animation first. And you can see at the bottom, if I grab this really quickly, see those punches in the paper. So those were used in the animation board so that all the papers could line up with each other as you're doing the animation. The next stage, the step in that process was to then trace it. So putting the transparent paper on the sketch, trace out the black lines, and then flipping the paper over and painting, filling in the lines with paint on the back.
In filling in the outlines, the figures are reversed as the paint is applied, so the cells, when placed before the camera to be photographed, will present a smooth, glossy surface with no suggestion of paint or brush lines.
Each one of those frames was put in sequence, and then you had apparent motion. Cool? Then the other source of inspiration is the absence of black lines that to articulate a form, but still using animation. So this is an Illustrator designer named Alexis Jamais, I believe. It's pronounced, I'm not sure. I think he's French. Anyway, I'm just into the ethereal nature of this. So what happens when you remove the black line from an animation? What are the effects? So how do we start this? You start with a notebook or a piece of paper and a Sharpie or some black, thick marker, something that makes a mark that's pretty permanent that you cannot erase, because that's what we're doing. No pencil, no paper. No pencil, definitely paper, and a Sharpie or some type of black marker. And then you draw. So this is the scene that I chose. It's in my kitchen. You can see, we got the Instapot, we got the fiddly fig, we got Beckett's bibs, my juggling balls, you got it, a painting I did, all the things. And this is the drawing that I made, right? There's the time lapse. So hold on. So let me interrupt myself really quickly because I want to go into this process a little more about drawing the thing that's in your environment, the observational drawing. It's a little observation, it's a little improvisation, because first you'll be looking really closely at something for only 5 minutes in your environment, right? Like studying the lines, studying the shapes and the contours of the thing, but you're also working with a black Sharpie, so you can't, once you make a mark on the page, it's there. You live with it. So then after that observation, you make a mark and then you improvise. You you react to the mark. So I did a couple different versions. That was my first one. And then I didn't really I realized I wanted the plants more. I wanted more of a subject. And you'll see in the animation why we kind of want a subject, because we're only going to fill in the color in one of the things that we're drawing. I mean, you could do more, but that's what I do in my example. And then I got, I did a little bit more and I was sort of content with that. But then I finally came to the last one and I was happy with it. And that's the one I went with. So the whole process took 15 minutes, right? These are 5 minutes per drawing. So feel free to make as many iterations as you need. So, as the observation and the improvisation becomes a little bit more refined and you understand your subject a little bit more, the thing in the environment that you're depicting. So enjoy that process of observation and improvisation in this 5-minute drawing. Okay, you can go now. End up with. So you'll have a drawing in your notebook, have it be vertically oriented, and then take a snap with your a photo with your camera. It doesn't have to be a perfect photo, but you want to capture the page without too many shadows. You can have some shadows, but try and do what I did right here. Like just get that the page like with a fairly even light over it. And then we're going to jump into Photoshop. So here we are. Welcome to Photoshop. Make sure it's downloaded. And when you open it, this will appear. And what you want to do, you can go straight into opening an image. So you can create a new document, but we don't need to do that because this is what we're doing. So File, Open, and then navigate to where your photo is that you took of your sketch. And then the first thing we're going to do is we want to crop this to the right size. And so this is very specific. We want it to be, so have hit C on your keyboard or come here to the crop tool. So you can see C right there. And then come here where you'll have the settings. So the drop down, you want W times H times resolution, which is width, height, resolution, right? And then the width right here, we want it to be 880. And then type in PX for pixel. Hit Tab. And then you can do 1080 px, so that's the height, and then tab, and then make sure that this is set to 72 pixels per inch. And then once you have those three things set to those three numbers, hit enter, and now we can come into our work area and start to move this crop area around. And you can see no matter where you grab it, it will maintain its proportionality because it's locked in here at the top. I'm going to zoom in by hitting Command or Control plus, and you all will probably have to navigate this too. You have to make a decision about what you want to include in your final crop. I'm going to miss some of these leaves, but I can let them go. And then you can see here, if you hover on the outside of the corners, you can come to a rotation, and a grid will appear that will help you align your image. So I want to actually, great. And then if you click in here, you can click and drag. So that's great. And then when you're ready, when you're set, you hit the return or enter key. And here you are. So it looks great. You know, my photo is pretty good, so it already looks like a black and white image, but it's not. So we need to do some adjustments to make it work really well in Illustrator. And this image is pretty good, but I'll show you what the process that I go through when I do my hand-drawn illustrations to turn them into vector images. So you have your image. I'll just put it here so it fills up the screen. I'm going to go to Image. Mode, I want to come out of the color mode and just go into grayscale because I just want, you know, that grayscale black and white to deal with. And then I'm going to go back to image, and I'm going to go adjustments, curves, and then you can see here I have information along this gradient grayscale. And I have a lot of information here, and this is this light gray that's kind of my background, quote-unquote, white. And then this peak right here is the black. And I want this black, which is now more of a dark gray, to really be accentuated. I want the curve to be focused there, and I don't want this gray information. I want that to be gone so that it's just really white. So you can see what happens. You click on the curve on the line, you can turn it into a curve to make an adjustment. That's all we'll go into there, but that's essentially what you want to do. And that'll help remove also any kind of errant shadows that you have potentially in the corners, or it'll get rid of the grays that are in there in your sheet, in your photograph. Okay, now before we hit save, let's come back and switch it back to RGB mode. I think this will help us. We just want it to be set at RGB color mode. So that was image, mode, RGB color mode. Cool. So now we want to save as. And save as is important. So File, Save As, because we don't want to lose our initial JPEG, right? Our initial drawing. So we just want this edit to work with. And it's just good to have the original too, in case we need to go back for any reason. This seems good to me. Now, let's go to Illustrator. So we've adjusted our photo so that we have an image, a black and white image. And we can just open it now. So open. We can select it. This is the one. And there it is. So I'll put it in the center of the page for you by hitting Command or Control 0, so it centers it. And now what we're going to do is turn it into a vector image. Right now it's raster, right? It's made of like little pixels, but we can essentially create shapes, vector shapes of these lines. So with the selection tool, so hitting V on your keyboard, just click the image, and you can see in the properties panel some things come up, and we want image trace. Click image trace. Let's go black and white logo. You can see it's cut off a little bit in the video, but black and white logo. So already you notice something happened, right? It sort of smoothed out our lines. The quality has changed, but this could now be a vector-based graphic if we just hit expand. But let's not go quite there. Let's come here. This is the panel to change the image trace settings. And now we can adjust this. And you'll see once I move it, the preset will say custom. And you can play with threshold. You can see the effect it has on that. How many of the kind of like not totally black pixels it's deciding are black. It's kind of deciding where the limit is here with threshold. So you can see, turn it all the way up. It's certainly more than we want. And cool. Let's leave it at that. That's what I'll use. And then paths is the number of paths. And this you'll see. Take a quick look at, close look at the image. Let me sort of come like 100%. You see that it's more capturing the kind of like jitteriness of my hand as I was doing the drawing, versus if I go the other way, it's smoothing everything out or interpreting it well with fewer paths. So thus you have like straighter lines and more angular moments like that. So I like a lot of paths, especially when I'm tracing a hand-drawn thing like this. And then similarly, I like a lot of corners. And it just makes those corners sharper and maybe more like the original line drawing. Noise you can mess with. And then the big thing before we leave this panel is we want to ignore white. We want this to be transparent. So if you don't have that selected, then your white will be shapes, and that's great for some things. But for our purposes, we want to ignore the white. And then we come and expand. And now, my friends, this is magically a vector image. So we can then change the color, and you see we actually are stuck in grayscale. So we could change that grayscale to RGB. Let's come here to RGB. So we just click in this window right here after we selected fill. Select that to RGB, and then we can just go to town with our fun colors. And this will come in handy later on. You can also apply a stroke to it. You have so many options that you can do with this once you have your line drawn in, your line drawing in the program. So that's it for this section. I'm going to get rid of my stroke again. And then in the next section, we will go over how to fill the colors with brushes, with a more kind of loose hand-painted style behind it, not the kind of rigidity of the vector-based images in Illustrator. And we'll talk about animation in Photoshop and how to export a GIF. Okay, that's it. I'll see you next time.